Welcome to the Legislators Lounge. I'm Jim Webb, the host of the show. My co-host is Brian Chirichiello. Today with us we have the chair of the Transportation Committee, Kansas Bouchard from Concord, Representative, and Representative Fred Rice from Hampton. Our topics of our show today are going to be, we're going to start off with the Purple Heart, and we're going to go into these are all transportation-related bills. Purple Heart, the child's restraint system. We're going to go into the speed limit being raised on 93, and then we're going to go into the interlock, ignition interlock system for cars.
And good. Nice to have you both here today on our show. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having us.
No
Thank you very much.
I guess we'll start by maybe giving us a little bit of a background and our audience a background about yourself a little bit. We'll start with Representative Rice.
Well, I'm in my second term right now. During my first term, I had the pleasure of sitting right next to Representative Jim Webb, and we had some good exchanges during the entire session. I sit on the Commerce and Consumer Affairs Committee. I'm from Hampton. I'm a former selectman. I served on the Budget Committee, the Planning Board, and several other boards and commissions throughout there. I believe in not overstaying my welcome in any one place. So I've been there. I'm a military veteran, and so on our first subject here, I think I'll be addressing it from that perspective and so forth. I'm a private businessman. I requested to be on the Consumer Affairs Committee, the Commerce Committee, for that reason, so I could do everything I could to assist consumers and small businesses in the state. And I guess it was probably best not to have somebody on the Transportation Committee to discuss with you, because you don't want to get into arguments outside of your committee. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Great. And Representative Bouchard.
Bouchard. I'm Candace Bouchard. I'm from the city of Concord. I'm in my 12th term. I started originally being a member on the Public Works and Highways Committee. I was chair of that committee for 2 terms. I am also a Concord City Councilor, my 3rd term. I have been involved in transportation issues, Greater Concord Safe Communities issues, and I enjoy the new subject matter of the Transportation Committee because it deals more with safety and planning of transportation than it does of the actual building and bonding of transportation systems. So I think a lot of us on the Transportation Committee are new to the committee, and it's been a very good committee where we have great open discussions. And although I'm not a veteran, I am a daughter of a 20-year World War II retired Navy veteran.
Right, and I'm on the committee as well, and I just want to say you've done a fantastic job as the chairman of the committee.
Thank you.
And one of the most controversial subjects that we talked about obviously was the Purple Heart plate, and we know that there was a bill introduced. I believe it was Senator D'Alessandro that introduced the bill, but do you want to touch a little bit on the subject of what the Purple Heart plate was all about?
It's a Purple Heart license plate, and it was introduced in the Senate, Senate Bill 47. Senator D'Alessandro and Senator Bouchard, I believe, were 2 of the sponsors on the bill. The bill basically allows the surviving spouse to retain the plate on her vehicle as long as he or she lives or until the surviving spouse remarries. We have 2 other plates that the state allows that to happen with. The Pearl Harbor Survivors Plate allows the surviving spouse to retain the plate, and the POW plate allows the surviving spouse to retain the plate. There is no monetary benefit to the surviving spouse. If the surviving spouse chooses to retain the Purple Heart plate, they still have to pay all registration fees. It's very clear that the veteran community is split on this issue. It's not unusual. The issue has been discussed and passed in more than 30 states. So it's not something that has just appeared in New Hampshire. I believe Vermont passed it in 1990, Massachusetts and Maine in the mid-1995, I believe. So it's not new, but it is the second time around. I think New Hampshire has had this discussion.
Right.
I have a little question, because I I would have asked, I did get up and speak against this particular bill on the floor, but I held it back on asking this question because it was such of an emotional thing and it wasn't appropriate to ask it, so I didn't. But this is a different forum, I can ask it. What do you think about the spouse having this plate? Do they pay the price that vanity plates? Did I pay for the plates that are in the back seat of my car or in the trunk of my car?
The Purple Heart plate, the surviving spouse, if the surviving spouse chooses to retain that plate, the surviving spouse will pay all registration fees that goes with that plate.
But the plate itself doesn't cost for a veteran to get.
They get one set, but they do have to, one set that goes with, they get one free set. So for whatever reason, something happens to that set or gets mangled or you want a second set on your vehicle, you need to pay for that second set. But they only get one Purple Heart plate, and then they have to pay all the registration fees. In some states, the Purple Heart and other veteran plates, there are no fees attached to them.
But so there is no, say, $45 a year to have the special plate, even though, because my whole argument...
You get the plate once, so you get the plate once.
Well, it's like any other automobile. I guess we get the plate once, but we got to pay the $45 every year for it.
Well, we don't ask the veteran to pay for the plate every year, so.
Let's, we're going to get Representative Rice's perspective on it, because I know he spoke on the floor and he spoke quite eloquently on that subject.
Well, I think you have to start with this issue by understanding that probably the veterans and the others, and the others who are non-veterans, will probably come at this and have demonstrably come at this from totally different perspectives. It's what's in their background, it's what they have experienced, what they have felt about it. And while there's certainly nothing wrong with wanting to show the sympathy and toward the spouse and so forth, from the veteran's point of view, the Purple Heart is a very, well, from anybody's point of view, the Purple Heart is a very unique decoration in the military. It's a unique award. It's the only one out of all of the awards and decorations that there are, all that fruit salad you see up and down on people's chests, it's the only one that does not require any type of recommendation. It is awarded as a condition. It recognizes the fact that the person either shed blood or was physically wounded as a direct or indirect result of combat with the enemy, or if they died from that wound. So it's not, it doesn't require a guy saying, I think he was brave or anything like that. It is simply an acknowledgement. The plate, which many, but not all states, allow Purple Heart recipients to have, is an extension of that recognition. And I've talked to a lot of veterans about this, both in the House and outside. We've got a couple of House members who are recipients of the Purple Heart. Right. And I've talked to them, and the attitude is pretty much uniform. This is a direct recognition so that when you drive by, that guy is, you know that guy that's driving that car earned the Purple Heart. And the fact that the spouse happens to also drive that car is incidental to that. Once the individual dies, then the purpose of that recognition dies along with them. The Purple Heart is not a remembrance, it's not a keepsake, it's not a pass-me-down, it's not an heirloom, it's not part of the family estate, it doesn't belong to the car. It is a singular award for somebody having been wounded in combat. And most states, out of the 30 or so states that do have this, the vast majority of them all say in large letters on there, combat wounded. I don't know of a spouse that's ever been combat wounded. The Purple Heart plate, the Pearl Harbor plate, the only requirement for that was you had to be on the island of Oahu on that day. There's nothing there. There's no valor, no wounds, no nothing. So it's not an equivalent.
Do we know how many plates of the Pearl Harbor plates that we have out in New Hampshire? Do we
Very
know?
few. I think we had, in our Memorial Day parade down in Hampton, we had a gentleman there who was a Purple Heart survivor, and he's a pretty old guy, and there aren't very many left in the state right now.
So what's your take on the fact that the veteran community was kind of split as well?
Well, I think I disagree somewhat with Representative Rice. I don't think all veterans are against Senate Bill 47. Obviously, as you know, Brian, we had 2 letters of support from the Military Order of Purple Heart Veterans, and to be a member of the Military Order of Purple Heart Veterans, it is the only veteran organization where you have to be a combat veteran and have a Purple Heart, and they wholeheartedly support this legislation. So for me and the majority on the Transportation Committee and the majority in the Senate and the majority in the House, it came down when there's a split in the veterans community, who do you listen to? And for me personally, it was listening to the guys who have earned the medal and wear the medal and have gone and requested and have a license plate. We are not talking about the medal itself, we are talking about a license plate on the car, and we would all like to think when that car goes by that it is the veteran driving the plate, but it could be a child, a friend, a family member. And we've been at war for quite a while now, and we have a lot of Purple Heart veterans. I was surprised when I met the Marine who is the leader in the New Hampshire Purple Order of Purple Heart Veterans, Military Order of Purple Heart Veterans, and he's a young man. I expected to meet someone older, and
Right.
and so and I think this plate doesn't, allowing this legislation to go forward doesn't disrespect anyone, but it does respect the wishes of those who belong to the Military Order of Purple Hearts and have requested that we put this plate, allow the surviving spouse to have this plate. And I think it's a simple gesture we can make, and I don't see in the Military Order of Purple Heart Veterans don't see where it's any dishonor at all. And I respect Representative Rice's point of view, but there are a lot of point of views out there.
Yeah,
Well,
That's what makes up the House.
absolutely, absolutely.
I would tend to agree. There's no dishonor. However, the way I look at this, and I actually went down to our VFW and I spoke to some of the members over there, and I know a couple of other veterans that I spoke to, and they were against it. And it wasn't that it was a dishonor. Nobody was being dishonored by doing this. They were more upset that the person that would be getting the plate would be didn't earn the plate, and that was the concern that they had, is that the person that earned it should have it. And getting back to what Representative, I believe what you said was Representative Rice said that you have to die to get the Purple Heart. Well,
No.
wounded. Oh, I thought you said
No,
die.
it's
Okay.
wounded or
Die from wound.
directly or indirectly.
No, because you wouldn't have the plate.
I know, you couldn't get the plate. I was going to say, how would you ever get the plate?
But I just want to, interject that I also I'm a member of the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars through my father, and I went down to the American Legion one day for lunch, and I asked the same question, and some said yes, some said no, and when veterans said no, I said, but the Military Order of Purple Heart veterans are for it, and then the majority of them said, well, if those guys want it, then it's okay.
Well, you know what I think about that?
But I mean, so I think it just shows we can go and ask the questions and you get the divided answers.
But there's a big spread between, as far as the attitude, between those who served and those who served in combat and saw people, quote, earning the Purple Heart.
Well,
If
I
you ever
asked
saw
my
anybody
father, and
earn
he
that-
was in World War II. He was in combat. He supported of it. His youngest brother was he's a Vietnam veteran. He was supported of it. So I just think the community is in, I think we can discuss it, but we'll
my Legion
agree to
post-
disagree.
At my Legion post, there were three recipients of the Purple Heart, and they were adamant, no, that's not my wife's, that's mine. And when I die, nobody else gets it, that was mine.
Right.
You got to remember where this thing came from. It came to Senator D'Alessandro, a young lady who was a veteran, who wanted this so that her mother could remember her father, who had died a couple of years before.
Right.
It wasn't a pass on from a living person to their spouse when that individual died. The guy had the plate, he died, the plate went away, she came back in and wants the plate brought back as a remembrance, and that's where the sticking point
I think the testimony is she wanted
Right.
to honor her husband.
She wanted to
which is a nice thing
It's
to
a
do.
nice
30
gesture.
other states allow to do. So, we're not in their relationship. So the two Purple Heart veterans that you're speaking about, their wives or husband, whoever, would know that and understand that and not carry on with the plate on the vehicle. There could be another couple where it's a different emotional contact, and they may want, and that veteran may want his spouse, the surviving spouse, to have the plate.
You get two extremes on the situations, though. One is, let's say somebody was single when they earned the Purple Heart, when they received it. They get out of the service, they're completely separated from the military, they get married. They are able to have the Purple Heart plate. And again, it's a recognition of what happened to them when they were in the military. And then they die. The spouse, who never had anything to do with the military, with the Purple Heart or anything else, gets a plate that she may not even know its significance.
I'm sure she knows the significance.
Not if she was never involved with that.
My mother is a second wife. My father was in World War II. And after World War II, he marries my mother. My mother definitely understands, I think, from their relationship of being married over 55 years before she passed away, what the military meant and what those years in combat meant. But she's, and she's entitled to be buried in the Boscawen Veterans Cemetery where she is now. It's not a different issue.
It's a totally different issue.
We don't know people's relationships, and to say you didn't know the person when they were in combat, it might have been married to them for almost over a half a century and don't understand the wounds and the emotional stress and having to live with that just because they weren't a couple at that point in time. I don't think we can go there. We don't know what's in people's relationships. Military awards and decorations are not given for relationships. They are given for excellence and for achievement. That is the only thing, and when that goes away, it goes to individuals. The only thing that you see in the way of group awards are ones worn on the right side, the Distinguished Unit Citation, Meritorious Unit Citation, that are specific to an overall unit. Only the people who served in that unit at the time that was awarded can wear it, and the ones who are currently assigned to it. They leave and go to another unit, they give that up. They can't wear it anymore.
But now, Fred,
we're talking a license plate here. We're talking a license plate that shows, no, it's not an extension. It shows recognition of something that the veteran, that they have earned
what's your thoughts about the 29 other states that allow it? I mean, the interesting thing about this subject is I don't see it as a right and a wrong answer. It's just very emotional. I mean, everyone makes great points, but
I can't be a circuit rider and run around to 30 different states and right the wrongs or perceived wrongs or correct attitudes or anything else. I serve in the New Hampshire legislature. I want New Hampshire to do what's right. I don't think I would never ever give weight to what another state does and say that we should do it just because another state does. This is the live free or die state. We should do it on our own for our own reasons. We do enough. We bring that up when it's in our own interest. We're the live free or die state, so we shouldn't be copying any other state.
Well, I agree with that. Maine, Massachusetts, and Vermont, Connecticut, all New England states allow the surviving spouse to have this license plate except for New Hampshire. And we are the live free or die state. And we should respect the veteran, each individual veteran who has that plate, for them and their spouse to make their own decision on whether that plate goes with the surviving spouse or not.
So maybe it would have been a better bill if it gave that decision to the veteran.
Actually, there was an amendment put forth, I believe, in the Senate, and those opposed to the bill said no to that also, is what I was been told.
One other thing, it's a federal award. And I think that we're getting into the edge of the thin ice, where the ice is starting to get a little thin. If we are, as a state, trying to work with federal awards, the Purple Heart, the award of it is covered under the U.S. Code, under the Code of Federal Regulations, under the rules of the Institute of Heraldry, and under the service regulations of all of the uniformed services. And nowhere does it say anything about the state being able to do anything. This is an accommodation. And that's all it's an accommodation and an extension of the recognition. But once you get into that, beyond that person, I think you're off into the ether in an area that we should not be into at all.
And then I would say, veterans and Memorial Day, it's honor, remember, and respect. And this plate, by the surviving spouse being able to have the plate, allows them to be the honor, respect, and to be remembered. And that's all they're asking, is to be remembered.
Now this debate probably went on in the House.
2 hours.
2 hour debate, which is
it
incredible.
was very emotional.
It was really good. I mean, in committee was very emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very
Emotional,
surprised.
but emotional on the facts. It wasn't emotional on
Right.
emotion, but
Right.
more on the facts. And people had hard and fast beliefs on one side or the other.
Absolutely.
Now, we heard some testimony on this in the House that there are actually some lawsuits going on, I believe, in some of the other states right now, as far as whether or not the spouse is saying that she's entitled to it, and it may be a second spouse, maybe the first and second spouse want it. I'm not sure of the details of the lawsuit. Did you hear anything like that?
No, we
in the
didn't
committee?
have anything like that in
No, I don't
committee, and I
believe
think
that.
New Hampshire laws would be different. And this would be clear. I mean, this plate is already on the vehicle and already registered, so I don't see how a third party, second, third, fourth wife could come forward and say that plate is mine.
But the example was given in the committee by one of the committee members, and I repeated it. I didn't use some of the same terminology, but let's say you had somebody who earned the Purple Heart. They were married at the time. They got out of the military. Let's say he stayed in, retired, whatever. Many years later, there's a midlife crisis or a disagreement or whatever, and they get divorced. And he marries a 20-year-old. And then years after that, he passes away. Who gets the plate?
Right.
The 20-year-old is the one who has authorized the plate.
But here we go again, judging
years
people's
removed.
relationships.
Years removed from it. I asked my wife what she thought about it, and I asked my daughter-in-law.
What, that if you had a trophy wife, or?
No. I said, what do you think of this situation? She says, that's ridiculous. I didn't do anything to earn that. I don't deserve it.
And that's
it's your medal, not
and that's
mine.
a choice you and your wife are able to
No, it's
make.
what the military does. It's the U.S. It's the federal government says this goes to the individual. It is an individual
But we're
award.
talking the license plate, not the medal.
Well, it's an extension of the same thing.
Well,
you
I
could
mean-
call it the "you were wounded in combat"
It's still a
plate, and it would
license
be the
plate.
same thing.
So we had the debate. It was 2 hours, and
Yes.
we
And
know
you can
that
see how it went.
it was, and there was a lot of great information that everyone shared. So I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Debate it,
Yeah.
get all the
Debate,
points
and
out.
it came out the way it did, and
we
we have to live with that result.
absolutely.
I think that it was well-intentioned but misinformed on the majority
I
side.
think we were very well informed, and we went and.
Misguided, I'll put it that way.
No, I don't think it's misguided to honor the wishes of the Military Order of Purple Heart veterans and pass the
But
pass
that
the
was the
bill.
New England. That was the New Hampshire chapter. The
New
New England
Hampshire.
chapter, I believe, came up here and was opposed to it.
No, the New Hampshire
That's what
chapter
Al
was for
Baldessaro
it. Well,
told me.
he was wrong. The New Hampshire chapter supported it, and New Hampshire belongs to Region 1, and the Region 1 chapter also supported it. That's Leon Brown. He actually came up here to ask questions
I
and to
was not
speak to me.
Part of that. That was
So,
related to
no,
his-
so they both chapters
I could see
supported
that,
it.
especially if all the other New England states, that's probably is that region, so I
I
can
mean, to be
imagine.
that important that he would travel up from Connecticut to
Yeah.
be there to answer questions. So I don't think they see it as something that disrespects the medal.
Right, so that was probably the biggest controversial piece
Our
that we saw in
longest-
transportation.
our longest debate,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
absolutely.
How about in committee? Was it a lot?
Well, in committee,
the
it
same.
was,
We
it was
had
actually,
the same conversations.
and
yeah.
even a little bit more emotional, I thought,
Yeah.
at some time, at some point. So
Yeah, because you have all that input from the public.
Well,
so-
there was a lot more input from some of the wives who were very emotional about it, who felt that they deserved it, and from some of the veterans who got much more.
absolutely.
Well,
animated
interesting
about
enough,
it.
one committee member, a woman, her family has, in her family, there, I think she said 3 Purple Hearts and 1 congressional medal. And so, and she asked all her family members, and they favored the bill.
Right.
So,
Right.
Now, you originally said that this bill was brought up because of somebody's daughter or something
Yeah.
that wanted the bill, but in this particular bill would not do that, though, right? It's
No,
only the
no.
spouse.
but it's not unusual with
No,
any
no,
bill
she didn't
we
want it for
have.
herself. She wanted her mother to have it in honor of her father.
Right.
Okay.
That'd be the same state laws.
Right.
But, I mean, we have citizens approach us all the time to put forth laws. So that wasn't
that was-
unusual that a citizen pursued it.
No, as a matter of fact, we heard that she's been trying to change that
second
law
time.
a few times, and she was very passionate about it as well. I mean, you have to respect that, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, Jim, we'll lead up to another one, another
Okay.
question.
Yeah, we'll talk about one that I got up and spoke about on the floor, which is the child restraint system or
The
the booster seat.
seats, yes.
Right, that bill passed the House, and actually, from what I was talking to another member of your Transportation Committee who was on the Committee of Conference, and apparently it passed the Committee of Conference too.
Well, there's an amendment to it. The House passed it where the original bill was less than 5 and 55 inches. The Transportation Committee and those who brought the bill forward wanted to increase the age by 2 years, increase the height by 2 inches. The Transportation Committee, we did a compromise. We went 1 year, so less than 6, and then 1 year, less than 7, and then 1 inch more. So what happened when it went to the Senate amended the bill to the original version.
Yeah.
So the Committee of Conference met last week, and it's my understanding they came to an agreement, and the agreement is a true compromise. They went with the House position on age, which was increasing it 1 year, but the Senate position on height, which increased it 2 inches. So that's the compromise, and I believe everybody was happy with that, and everybody will be signing off. So.
And do we know the governors will be signing?
Yeah, I think so.
Now, this particular bill, the main concern was the children's safety. We do have a seatbelt law in New Hampshire for children under the age of 18, which most parents know that, hopefully. If they don't, then you should be. You're buckling your child up. And what I tried to bring light of during the debate was that in actuality, the child really should be in the back seat of a car, because in most fatal crashes, if the child's sitting in the front seat, it's so much more likely, the child is so much more likely to have a fatal accident.
You're correct. Any child under 12 should always be in the back seat.
Right, but a lot of parents don't know that, and they, like, as a matter of fact, my own daughter will let her son, who is, right now he's 7, so actually he'll be 7 in August, and wouldn't even be subject to this. But if you're good, you can sit in the front. But that's not necessarily good, though.
Right. And I think, too, if you look in your vehicle, because I think the automotive industry has really your concerns. If you look in your vehicle on your visors, it will actually say that a child under a certain height and certain weight should not be in the front seat due to danger or death. So the automobile industry is very, very clear. Right. When you get the car, the manual also says that. And when you do buy, and we're just improving on existing law, and when you do buy a booster seat or a child restraint seat, they're also very, very clear. And it's never, ever to put the child in the front seat. The vehicles like a pickup truck that do not have a back seat, or a very old vehicle that does not have a back seat, actually have a switch where you can turn off the airbags.
No, not necessarily. My pickup truck is a new pickup truck, and it's all automatic. Now, my old pickup truck used to have the key that you'd put in and turn it off. The new one doesn't. It's all related to the sensors in the seat.
So they know about the weight. So one way or the other, it's working.
Yes,
so
not really.
But hopefully,
you have a 7-year-old jumping around in the front seat. You see that light going on and off.
Hopefully, you can get your grandson back in the back seat there.
Yeah. I mean, part of this bill was because the seat belts were riding very high on children, I guess up towards their necks, and they felt that if they had to slam the brakes on, most of these kids get either neck injury or chest injury.
And if the belt is not right along the stomach area, they also get internal injuries. And our committee has at least 3 first responders, 3 firefighters, and I believe at least 1 or 2 more that might have been EMTs or firefighters. And and they have personal knowledge of seeing what happens when a child isn't restrained. And this was only trying to bring New Hampshire up to the national standards. And we already have this. It's an existing law we were approving on. Right. So
the newer cars, though, most of the newer cars have the better seat restraints for the children in the
Some
back.
of the newer cars actually in the back seat, there's like a middle piece that will flop down that could be a booster seat that you could strap a child into.
And actually I saw on YouTube that Ford was actually putting airbags in the seat belt.
Well, yeah, that could be
So
a whole other hazard.
emergency, the seat belt actually inflated. I mean,
and it inflates out instead of towards you.
Right. So I mean, the auto industry is really looking into this stuff, so which is good.
Which could be even more things that you don't know about yet.
But it was wonderful that you got up to speak, because it educated more people on why you would not put a child in the front seat. So.
Well, that's what I was basically, and I did try to put an amendment in it to add the back seat portion of that, which I knew wouldn't go, but I just wanted to get up and express my concern with
Well appreciated.
the safety of the children. 'cause
wasn't
it is-
there wasn't there a short rep
Yeah,
that said
and
that she would have to be would she be in the booster seat because she wasn't quite tall enough?
She did. She actually got up and said that.
But it was either or. Yeah,
Right,
I
right.
actually have a
Not the
friend
age.
who's very, very petite, and I actually called her one day when we were doing the bill to ask her how tall she was.
I didn't
Well-
have the pleasure of participating in the committee discussion, but I did support it on the floor. And I think that the thing that I like about the bill is that it adds further definition to the standards for protecting children. And personally, I think that our New Hampshire is kind of unique in this respect. We're a little bit on the loosey-goosey side in terms of seat belts and helmets and things of that nature. And I'm very happy that we've got it where kids are required to wear the belts. Personally, I wish we had it for adults too, but we want to maintain the live free or die attitude. And as I mentioned to you before we started the show, I think that on something like this, if people want to exercise the right not to protect themselves, then there shouldn't be any public money spent on their care if they do get injured as a result of that. I mean, there's an argument on that side of it.
Well, yeah.
I'd rather see more people, I'd rather see it a little tighter in the terms of safety and protection overall.
What do you say about the people that think this is government knows better than a parent? I mean, because let's face it, parents and grandparents really want the best for their kids and grandchildren. You would think that they would most of them do research, and they're going to get the proper booster seat. But is this where government's saying we know better than you?
If you ever want to see the judgment that a significant portion of the American population exercises, just watch the Jay Leno show some night when he does jaywalking, and some of the questions he asks people and the things you get back, and you say, sometimes people don't always exercise the best judgment. And this isn't draconian. This isn't a thing that you got to sit there and be restrained from all movement and everything else. It's something to help kids. It's a start. It's not a big leap, but it's a sensible one. And again, it protects them from injuries across the neck and so forth. And I think for that regard, the reason it's good.
Parents look at us for, guidance. And having a guidance law like this on the book shows that, it really is important that you do that.
Right.
I think education is the most important aspect of any law, not just this law, whether it be helmets or seat belts. I wear my seatbelt. I wear my helmet on my motorcycle.
Yeah.
Full face Snell helmet, the best you can get, to make sure if I do happen to fall off.
You want to keep
Children
that
will
head in
grow up to
place.
do what their parents and grandparents,
Right.
it's a habit they have, and they see it's important to those they respect, they'll continue on with it. And I think that's our best education.
I do believe that too, because all my children were forced to wear their seatbelts when they were children, and they still wear their seatbelts today. When I get in the car, I just happen to, every once in a while I check, and my daughter will be putting her seatbelt on, my son will.
My daughter lives in California, where all of their laws are a lot tighter on all this, but she does it anyway. When they go anywhere, we allow an extra 5 minutes to get the kids all strapped in. She has 3 kids, and she makes sure that they're all sitting to the back. When they were younger, they're all sitting to the back, and she did not allow them to move up to the front seat until the oldest one got big enough. The other 2 stayed back there, and so forth. And so she was very, very conscientious about it. And it was good to see that. It was really good to see that.
And the other piece to this that needs to be considered is some of the booster seats are not made properly. If you're buying on the lower end of a booster seat and you don't put it in properly, it's really going to be useless.
Didn't they recall one just a couple of years ago?
Oh, they recalled
Because the easy way to do it was the wrong way to do it, and you had to really read the instructions, which many people don't bother to do.
Right.
And so they ended up recalling them to make them safer.
And there are lots of groups out there that also provide booster seats or car seats for infants and young children. Safe Communities Coalition out of injury prevention at a Dartmouth hospital does a lot, and they do a lot of outreach on how to properly buckle. And so there are groups out there that put the information forward, and we'll be putting out the new information when this bill does go forward. So I think we're very fortunate to have all these proactive groups that will, and of course the pediatricians in the doctor's office also.
Right.
Form.
I did do a little research before I actually did the bill, before I put my amendment in, and I went on the internet, and even most of the tests that they do, it's almost as high as 80% of people aren't buckling their children in properly in these seats until they're showed the proper way. And I think there was 8 out of 15 of the top selling booster seats are not recommended by the U.S. government. So, I mean, you go down to Walmart and buy a $10 booster seat, that's what you get, a $10 booster seat.
Right, exactly.
So consumers need to be careful and read the packaging and
There should be
where
some
it's
sort of
been
rating
approved.
on it. Like for instance, the Schnell rating on a helmet means that it can withstand an impact at so many feet being dropped.
Yeah,
I mean, there should be the same thing for a booster seat.
Yeah, I don't know if there is or not. So.
Yeah, so people should really do their research on those. Let's, another great bill we had in front of our committee was the speed limit bill.
We had 3 of those.
We had 3 of them, right? One actually passed, 2 did not pass. But
they were a bit confusing because there were 3.
Yes.
This class road versus that class road and everything else. And
right. Now, there was a couple of bills that went through, and I think it was increasing the speed limit from
65 to 70 north of Concord.
Right, which that passed.
That one,
Right,
There were
and it
2 other
does not include
bills.
the Franconia Notch area, but just north of Concord.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And then we had the other bills basically increasing the speed limit.
One was all New Hampshire interstate, and the other one I think was just I-89.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So let's touch base on that a little bit. I know
when I was on the way up here, I was purposely watching what the speeds were, just because I knew this was a subject of discussion. And coming up 101 from Hampton, the left lane does about 80. The right lane does about 75. And a huge tanker truck, a petroleum tanker truck, pulled out from the right lane at 75 and tried to get around on the left. And because there was a slight rise there, which he didn't see until he was already out in the left lane, it took 2 or 3 miles for him to get by. And as a result, it was all backed up. But the point is, the working speed on that, every day when I come up, it's a 75 to 80 mile per hour speed on there. Now the question is, should we make everybody a lawbreaker by keeping it there, or should we raise the law just to make them not lawbreakers?
And one of the bill sponsors had mentioned that, and his justification was if 80% of the people are breaking the law, quote unquote, going over the speed limit, is it time to change the law? I guess that's the $1 million question here. How do you feel about that?
And I think too, we heard from the Department of Safety that you see the people doing 70 and 80, and their real concern is, now they see a lot of people doing 95, and they said that is a growing group of speeders that they are very worried about, and that's kind of where their focus has been lately, because there's just so many of those doing that extreme high speed limit.
Right.
I lived in Germany for a couple of years, and of course they have no speed limits on the autobahns over there. And people don't just all go wild. You'll get the occasional Mercedes with a big engine in it that will exercise his right to go as fast as he can. But by and large, people pretty much respect it, and they go with a reasonable flow for the conditions.
Right.
And I think in most of the states here in the United States where they have raised the speed limit considerably, like in the western states, Wyoming and Colorado and places like that, where they've raised it way up to 70 and 80 miles an hour, that there's no undue abuse to it.
But now you mentioned Utah, because that was in the committee as well. And one of the Department of Safety came to our committee and said, these roads that we see here in New Hampshire are really not engineered for that kind of speed. Now in Utah and Nevada, I've been on roads where you can actually see the road straight shot 10 miles.
Oh, yeah.
That's a little bit different. And so, I mean, when they're saying the roads are not engineered for that.
Except for north of Concord. The I-93, that's a newer interstate, and that was the safety issue of the road not being built for the higher speed was not part of that conversation for north of Concord, but certainly for 90, 93 up through Concord, I can't imagine consistently high speeds, and 89 because they mentioned the crosswinds and micro weather conditions that happen on 89.
Yeah, there's one place up there on 89 that is, there are wind warning signs and so forth.
So the majority of the committee felt that if we were going to start to look at this, north of Concord would probably be the best and the safest way to do it. And the sponsors were all from the North Country, and they drive it all the time, so they felt pretty secure and safe that there wasn't a hazard.
I don't go north of Concord too often, I like to stay down near the seacoast. It's a little easier down there.
A little biased over there.
But I don't know. I don't see an appreciable difference between the construction of 101, let's say. 93 is beeline straight. Granted, it has a heavier traffic volume, so that's probably a different condition. But like 101, I've seen people take some curves a lot faster than I ever would on there, but not seem to have much problem with it. It's a 4-lane divided highway with good fields of view, most of it. And I think that the public might be a little bit better served by raising it 5 miles an hour on something like that. Not a huge amount, but
Well,
I think it's perfectly capable of handling it.
when you look at the speed limit, wasn't it back when we had the energy crisis,
Yes,
is when it was
up to
lowered
55.
down to 55 everywhere?
70 every place before that, just about.
And it's also within a city of a population over a certain amount, it has to be 55. This is all federally regulated. So when the speed limits were put in place, I think, and a few states like us have gone up to 65 in certain areas, but I don't know if that's regulated by the federal as well.
The interstates are regulated by federal guidelines, but not all New Hampshire roads. You know, I drove up recently this winter helping a friend of mine. She was driving home from Florida, and it was amazing how many of the states we went through that had, 70, 75, and people were moving along.
Well, what's your thoughts? I mean, there was some testimony where people see the speed limit. I mean, it's just a natural thing. I'll admit I sometimes do it as well. If you're doing 65, you can say, well, I can do 75 before I can get a speeding ticket. So we increase the speed limits. Does it automatically? Does the person say, well, now I can drive 80, 85 before I get a ticket?
I think there's a natural comfort level that creeps in there. I don't think everybody, or even a major portion of the drivers, will want to go at a very high speed just because the speed limit was raised. Some will, but they do that now. Yeah. I think that there's a naturally some people are very comfortable driving at 55 miles an hour. Some people are comfortable driving at 65. Some are comfortable driving at 75. And I think that would it would make it easier, because when you have people that creep along, they frustrate other drivers.
Right, that was in testimony.
And that just, so if you raise the speed limit so they felt comfortable going a little bit faster, they could help clear out of the way and let other drivers pass.
Right.
I mean, a million different observations on this. It's very anecdotal, I think, in a lot of things. And the statistics, I don't know whether we have enough statistics in the state that are strictly attributable to speed alone. So it's still, I think, a subject up for debate, and I think it should be. I think the debate should continue on it.
There was also debate on the House floor on raising the speed limit 5 miles also causes the car to consume more gasoline, therefore we're consuming more oil, and therefore we're not being kind to the planet. So there was
that's why we changed from the olden day when Jimmy Carter was in office. We actually
That's why it went to 55.
Basically, to
there
conserve
were
gas.
quite a few members who also felt that that was another reason not to raise it.
Right.
My car's 10 years old. I get 21 miles to the gallon on it exactly, and I have gotten that from the day it was new. It doesn't matter whether I spend a week driving in town, stop and go, or whether I'm on trips back and forth to Concord and I'm on the interstate or on a divided highway or anything else. I get the same amount no matter what speed I go. And I don't know too many people that can attest to that being true. I know it's always a part of the discussion, but I don't know whether it's really verifiable or not.
Yeah.
Well, I know my wife did play with that when they come out with this thing called hyper driving.
Yeah.
Right, so she goes to Boston. She goes to Boston every day.
Technique you can use to.
Right, yeah, everything you do to save, and she did manage to save, a couple of gallons a week, going back and forth.
Research has shown anything above 65, your vehicle does consume more energy than if you'd stayed under 65. But you keep your tires inflated, keep your car tuned up. There's a lot of things you can do to make sure you get the best mileage.
I think that sometimes that can be a subject that comes up as a matter of convenience, depending on which side of an argument you may be on.
Right.
In my town right now, we're looking at putting in a bike trail on an old rail line. But the other possible use of it is to use it as a bypass, because in my town, the traffic narrows down to 2 lanes, and there's an awful lot of stop and go, and an awful lot of idling, and a lot of pollution.
Right.
But the people who want to put in the bike path, many of them are opposed to using it to alleviate the traffic so that we have less pollution.
Yep.
So they want less pollution because of bikes, but not less pollution because of making the traffic flow easier. So it's, like I said, it's
Yeah.
an issue that's going to have a lot of sides to it all the time.
Sure. And what about the fact that cars are just made better today? I mean,
Yeah, made to go faster.
I drive a Mustang, and I got to tell you, I mean, my foot's not on the gas, and I'm doing 40, so I've got to constantly make sure I'm not going too fast. And sometimes you don't realize how fast you're going. So, I mean, that's an issue
It's so
too.
quiet and so smooth.
Yeah, the newer cars do ride. I have a Mustang too. and my Mustang is pretty smooth when
You
it's
guys
on.
ever race?
Well, no, I would beat him because
Yeah,
I
he's
have
got
a
a
GT.
GT, I don't.
He's got a V6.
Okay.
Yeah.
But and it doesn't get that much better gas mileage, by the way.
At least you both get good
The
taste in
difference
cars.
between the two cars, I think, was like 2 miles per gallon, right? But it was like an extra $5,000 to buy it. So I said,
Yeah,
no,
I think
don't
I get
need that.
18 miles a
I'm
gallon.
not going to go that fast anyway. But my truck's a whole different story. That's a monster on gas, and but it's better than some of the older trucks because Ford is making better trucks nowadays.
Right, the engines are a lot better. As a matter of fact, I bought a Ford Escape, and it's a 4-cylinder, but it's the turbo Ford, so it's just the pickup it's got is you wouldn't think you're in a 4-cylinder.
We'd be
It's just
driving
incredible.
to Concord where Representative, another one of the dairy reps was with us, and he's saying, "Come on, get going there. You're going slow, Grampy," or something like that to me. And I said, "I'm doing 80, and this is in my truck." Right? So it's like,
Well,
you
the
know,
computers in the cars right now are an awful lot more efficient than the
Yeah,
carburetors were.
yeah, they're incredible.
And so they're burning cleaner as it is. And so I don't know. I think that it's a discussion that I say should continue and be reevaluated constantly because
Yeah.
as things come along to improve safety, to improve efficiency, and so forth, and to improve enforcement,
Right.
all of those things become part of the discussion. And I think that it's not something that we should say, okay, we settled that and put it on the back shelf.
Right, yeah. I think we're going
well,
to
it
see.
did,
issue.
it did pass, though. It did
Oh, yeah,
pass.
yeah.
One of them
It
did.
passed.
So
Yeah, one of them did.
the
Yeah,
one
the
up in-
90, north
yeah.
of 93,
North
that
of
committee
93, right.
passed out of committee and it's waiting
I
to
just
see what
passed
the
through-
governor
It
does.
passed
Yep,
the
the
Senate.
Senate
I
passed,
actually was
yeah.
in that committee meeting that day
So-
because one of my bills was being heard just right after it. So I got to hear all the conversation on it and the
Just
discussion.
remember, we still haven't gotten to the deal where you hop in your car in this magic system, you lean back and the magic
Oh.
system takes you to wherever you want to
Well,
go.
Google
I think it was in the
car.
Well-
50s that Disney came out with
Oh,
that.
there is
Well,
one.
that was
Google.
interesting because in our committee, we actually had a representative from Google talk about that. That was a bill that had come up. And it was interesting to know that the representative from Google said, we don't want you to study it right now. And I kind of think that they were just busy with the projects they were doing. But
They do have it
my
in the plans.
understanding is there are other companies that are actually looking into it.
Yes.
And so Google wants to try to slow things down so they can kind of control
I
everything.
think the Senate, we passed a bill, the House passed a bill, I believe the Senate killed that bill. But that brings up a whole lot of issues, you know, you might the privacy issues. Because,
Oh.
you know, somebody has a record of, if that car's going by itself, somebody has a record of where that car's going, where it's been, and how long it's been there.
Right.
Well,
You know,
Right.
so I mean, that's a whole nother issue to bring up.
Right,
when-
but I mean,
as
we should
that
have
goes
Representative
forward.
Kirk here to discuss this.
Oh, yeah. Actually, in the testimony we had were from a lot of handicapped people in the North
Yeah.
Country that said, we're begging you to bring this and study this because this would open up such a
World-
big
big
but
world for
issue
this.
there's
for-
no
oh, yeah.
no machine that can replace a human's responses, and
Not
and
according to Google.
you'll be putting, and everybody else would be in danger
Well, I don't
if
know.
you have machines driving themselves around.
I think you're going to see it.
Well,
It's-
Oh, yeah.
maybe I've seen commercials on television where the child is behind a car and the brakes jam on when
Yep.
they're backing out of driveway. I've seen other ones that have these new things in the headlights now that'll actually anticipate that
Right.
you're getting too close to a car and slow you down.
right.
So
So-
mark by themselves now?
Right, but just
Well-
think of the implications on if you actually had one of these automated cars and you did get into a little accident. What does the insurance world do?
Liabilities
Oh,
are
that's true.
unbelievable.
That just changes a lot of different things.
Well, I think
Yeah,
that this
who's
is
liable?
Who's liable?
The manufacturer, the you know, yeah, who would be liable?
Yeah.
This is one of these issues that just shows that life today is getting so much more complex, and you can't look at anything one-dimensionally anymore. You've got economic issues, you got environmental issues, you got liability issues, you got
Right.
productivity issues, convenience, cost, everything.
Right.
And
But I was reading that technology doubles every 2 years now at this point in time.
well, it's
I mean, it's
Alvin
just-
Toffler, future shock.
Right.
Yeah, I could believe that.
So,
Look at a computer. You buy a computer 2 years ago, and then all of a sudden you need a new one.
It isn't getting used to the change, it's getting used to the rate of change because
Right.
it's changing so much faster.
right, absolutely.
Well, I'll lead into our next topic with this, since it was brought up about the privacy issue, and I believe this was one of the things with this is the interlock system for motor vehicles.
For habitual
Habitual
drunk
offenders.
aggravated drunk drivers have been.
And I know one of the well, I'll just bring it up
Go ahead.
because we'll start off with it. One of this particular one would require, I believe it was a photograph being taken of the person blowing into the machine or whatever the interlock would be.
That's somewhat correct. We already have an interlock system in this, in the legislation has already been passed. I think originally 2006 and tweaked again last session. We have about 500 drivers that are on the interlock system, about 100 maybe of violators. What this legislation did is it close a loophole for fraud. So a person who had the interlock system in their vehicle and asked a passerby or another passenger to blow into it so the car would start, there was actually no penalty for that or for trying to bypass the interlock system. The camera piece comes in play if the driver of the vehicle fails when he blows into the system. Then there's a violation, and then the director at safety can then ask, then they see the photo to make sure that the person blowing in it is the person who's been violating. So it's not that it's always taking pictures, and the pictures only requested when there's been a violation. But these are people that, and it's voluntary. So if the condition of having your license returned to you is that you have one of these interlock systems, it allows you to go to work, still be a productive member of society, and only that, it helps with your behavior because you know if you blow into that, that vehicle's not moving. So it allows, gets habitual drunk drivers into a safe program. It helps in a small way rehabilitate them, give us safer roads, and it helps people still provide for themselves and their families. I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding on the what the legislation was doing, what the amendment was doing. We had a interlock person come in who sells interlocks, one of the companies that sells, and he went into this whole thing of what the interlock system could do, and a lot of what it could do, we don't allow it to do in New Hampshire, and I think some of that got lost, but I find it a very, I think it's a very, very helpful. All 50 states have it, keeps our roads safe, it allows people to go to work.
Right.
Wouldn't it make a lot more sense to have it take the picture if it did work? Because if it doesn't work, you can't get in the car, no problem. But if it does work, you want to make sure that the person who blew into it is the one who's going to be driving. So wouldn't it be better
Well,
if it
but
were
what
the
if
other way
I'm
around?
driving your car?
Well, because you blow into it, and if it doesn't work, then, and if it fails, then the person on the program's in violation. So it's not like I'm having my
okay,
friend
you want to catch them for having
violated their terms of their
drinking,
program.
yeah, so they're drinking.
Right.
Not necessarily they might get in the car.
Right.
Right, because if
See,
they
I would
violate.
look at it the other way.
Yeah.
that
Let me see
we
if I
don't
can
want them
drive
in the
So
today.
car
because
to
you
drive.
need to have some sort of penalty, and so
Yeah.
that, as they say,
They
so
want-
look,
They want to drink at home and not drive anywhere, that's one
That's
thing.
fine.
But when they get in the car,
That's
that
right.
would be a...
so.
And then the machine actually will ask them to blow in. It's a random time period.
Carried.
To start it, they would blow into it. And as they're driving, it could be anywhere. I think the testimony was between 2 and 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It could ask you to blow in again.
Ah, okay.
So you're not.
And in New Hampshire, we ask them to pull over, not reach under their seat and try to do it while they're driving. But all 50 states have some form of this program.
With the camera, or is New Hampshire? Okay, so we're not
Well,
the
once
first.
again, once again, the camera, and I don't even think we've ever requested a photo, but once again, the camera is only if there's been a violation. They're not randomly taking pictures.
And let's face it, driving's a privilege. You know, if you were drinking and driving, you lost that right. but the judge says, look, we understand you have to make a, earn a living, put this interlock system in. I think it's, only fair
And
to
you can
abide by that.
And you can say, no, I don't like
Yeah.
the system, and
You're not gonna take
I
it.
won't have my license. So
During
it's,
the last session, a number of bills came through on personal security and so forth, and individual protection. And we always saw Representative Kirk there. He is the champion of individual liberties, and he doesn't want anybody looking at anything. But it always came up that it's one thing to collect data, because we had an endless number of witnesses come in and say, there's a legitimate reason for this piece of data that we're collecting. Well, how do you weigh one against the other? So the problem does not appear so much to be collecting the data as it is, how do you get the assurance, the absolute assurance that it won't be misused? How do you control it and safeguard it? That's where the rub is.
and we
whether it
keep
be
this
on this,
data 36 months after they're off the program, and then after that, the data is discarded.
All right, we're going to have to end there because we're running out of time, and I'll give you each a few minutes to end and say whatever you'd like. So we'll start with you, Fred, since you want. Well, actually,
I thank you very much for having us up here to discuss. All of these weren't bills that I was intimately involved with, but like every representative, every one of the 400, everybody's got an opinion on every bill that comes forward. You get a chance to vote on it. I think that it's going to be interesting for the remainder of this session how they resolve the budget issues.
Right.
We have a lot of bills in committee of conference. Some of the ones that I've sponsored and co-sponsored are looking good. And another one, I got the word yesterday that it didn't make it through a committee of conference. So we just have to take it the way it goes and continue to do the best job for the reasons that the people elected us for. And thank you for letting us come up and voice an opinion on some of these.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun. Thank you. I appreciate being asked to come up, and it was wonderful debating the issue on the Purple Heart Plate again with you. And I agree. I think it's going to be very, very interesting not wondering, but see what happens in tomorrow, the decision on what the committee of conference on the budget and how that happens, and if we get a budget or do we do a continuing resolution, will there be a special session?
Right.
But I think that I have found the House session and committee work to be very, very productive this year.
good.
Whether we win or lose on whatever our issues are, I think we've all been very, very respectful in trying to move government forward and do the good things for people.
Absolutely.
Okay, this has been the Legislators Lounge, and you can find our show on the internet at derrylounge.com. We're also on Facebook. You could search Legislators Lounge on Facebook, and also YouTube, Legislators Lounge, and you can watch all our previous episodes. As a matter of fact, one of those episodes, which Representative Bouchard mentioned earlier, is the budget, and we did one with Representative Chandler was here for that one, and it talks in detail as to what might happen if we don't come up with a budget. So for now, till the next show.